Okay. Welcome everybody to, I can't even believe I'm saying this, the final episode of Moses Mighty Men. This is the last study that we are doing in the Mighty Men series. And obviously we bring it full circle. We're coming back to looking at the story of Moses. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that's joined. There's some of us that are joined literally every week. We're seeing some of the same names and faces, and then there's some people that are literally joining for the first time. If tonight is your first time, I just want to say welcome. I hope you get a lot even from tonight. Don't worry if you missed previous weeks. You should still get a lot from tonight. We also want to say this is an interactive study. We love to hear from you guys. So whether you're watching on Facebook, whether you're watching on YouTube Live, or if you're just watching the video replayed on either of those services afterwards, please just hit us up with comments, questions, anything, because we love to incorporate them in. Before we go any further, I'd love the guys to do a quick intro of ourselves. I know it's the final week, but some people still don't know who you are. So I don't know, Darren, can you kick us off? Who are you, sir? What are you doing here?
Yeah, hi, I'm Darren. Who am I? Just a regular guy who teaches in a secondary school. Father of, not even going to say the number, happily married. And yeah, here's one of my children now just walking into the room to talk to us. So yeah.
Is it?
It's Saturday.
Good time. Okay. Leif, who are you?
Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here and joining us today. My name is Leif. I'm here with my brothers and I'm excited to just go into the word and dig it up today. So let's see. Today's gonna be a good day.
Hey man, thanks. Clark?
Good evening, folks. My name is Clark Collins. Similar to everyone else, work with young people, prisons, gangs, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just happy to be here to get into the Word of God, man. So let's have some fun.
Cool, thank you. And last but not least, Jay.
Hey, I'm Jermaine. I'm a fan of Moses.
All right, I like that. Keep it short and sweet. So yeah, that's us, guys. I should also mention, I've got to give a shout out to the rest of the team. Not everyone's here every week, but these are the guys that have been with us through the process, through the discussion. And as always, sometimes the guys, they may drop in and out even during the course of the evening, but we want to say thank you for them for being here every single week. It's been amazing sometimes it's just amazing for us just to get the guys together, just to get the brothers together, you guys know. And just iron sharpens iron, as the verse says. So it's great to get everyone here together. And speaking of getting together, straight after this, as always, something we've been doing from the start of this series is every week after the main study, we have an after hours discussion on Zoom. And these have been really powerful. It's not always the exact same content that's covered. Sometimes it's different questions that come up, but it's your chance to interact. So if you have anything that you wanted to bring to us, please take down those details or share them again at the end. But we'd love you to join us in that study 10 minutes after the main study finishes in that Zoom room, unrecorded. Say whatever's on your mind. But yeah, we'll be able to get into it there. Cool. So it is me talking through this today. And these are the things we're going to look at. We're going to look at Moses. Obviously, Moses lived a long time. He lived 120 years, and we've looked at the early part of his life and other figures that came up throughout the course of his life. But it's a long time. And during that period, obviously, his last 40 years were spent leading the people. And that wasn't always an easy job. So we're going to look at, I think, a little bit of those wanderings, but mainly one incident in his life that kind of sums up what that journey was like and just gives us a taste of what Moses' character was. And also says a lot about the God that he served. So this is the breakdown of today. And we've also been joined, you may not see it. There he is. He's just jumped on camera. Jamie, good to see you, bro.
Likewise, bro, likewise.
Welcome.
How's it everyone doing today?
Bless, man, bless. Cool. So let's get into it, guys. Have you ever... I always throw these questions out there, but have you ever had to, I know you have, Darren, with your teaching. I know all of us, actually, most of us are teachers. But have you guys ever had to lead a group of maybe young people, just lead a group, and just found it difficult, just found it challenging. And don't name names. I know Leif is always naming initials and like pretending people don't know the names that he's talking about. But have you ever had that experience where you're trying to lead, you're trying to kind of guide people in a direction, and it's just a challenge?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, yeah. But before I do that, Jam said that we were weak to him. So Jam, man, what's going on, bruv? You all right?
Yeah, so you guys can't see the Zoom chat, but Jam calls us out if we don't welcome him with a fanfare. So
yeah, I think if you reverse the
Appreciate that, bro. Appreciate that.
Big up,
it's all right. It's all love.
it is good to see you, man.
I feel bare hot now.
You reverse the question for me. Have you ever found it easy to teach a bunch of kids and lead them somewhere? It's challenging. Like, it's tough. Like, as one of my colleagues says to me all the time, it's you one against 25 minds that are just like pretty much doing whatever they want to do, and you're having to rear them towards the place that you know, and you're the one that's got the goal and destination in mind. You've got to share it with them, and then you've got to get them on board. And then halfway down the line, when things aren't looking quite like you're getting there, they start going, "What are we doing? I don't even know what we're doing. Why do we even do that for?" Like, yeah, you basically a 4-year-old kid can make you look like your planning was rubbish in a moment. A 12-year-old can make you feel like you just, why should you get out of bed this morning? And a 16-year-old will make you want to murder him. But yeah, there are times when it's just absolutely beautiful and golden. Everything just slots into place.
No, I love that. Thank you, Dan. Anyone else?
Yeah. I share Darren's sentiments with leading kids and leading young minds. Also have the experience of leading a congregation and leading a drama ensemble. Yeah, to try to get them to try to cast a vision of something that we're going to do, something amazing that we're going to produce, and that everybody's got a part to play, even if it's like a line, even if you're playing a part of a leaf on a tree, that you're part of a leaf on a tree is an important, integral part of the whole journey. And I guess getting them to value the journey as much as the destination is one of the hard things as well.
I like that. I like the point. Obviously, it's a different approach with different roles and stuff, but I guess as a director or a writer, if you're getting guys to perform, it is, like you said, it's them catching that vision, them seeing things almost the same way as you see it, because then you don't actually need to do that much leading if they really catch the vision. But if they don't catch the vision, it's an uphill battle, right? Yeah. Anyone else want to comment on that? Clark, you look like you're about to.
Not a profit, fam. Literally, it's similar to what's been said already. I suppose it's just trying to. I don't want to use the word coerce because that seems quite manipulative, but it's trying to encourage people to kind of come across to your way of thinking or the way you see things, the way you perceive things, but also appreciating where they're coming from. And that could be the struggle, that could be the tussle between two different minds or two different perspectives. So it's not the easiest journey, but it can be very rewarding though. When things do work out, when lessons are learned, and when L's are taken, it can be very, very rewarding, man. So yeah.
No, I love that. I agree. Like from my experiences, it's not everyone doesn't always have the same things, but it almost seems so rare sometimes that everyone actually latches on and is fully engaged. But when it does happen, it's like the best feeling in the world. I think there's no feeling like the feeling of teaching someone something or guiding someone somewhere and they really take it on board. But part of that is because it's so rare. And looking at Moses' life, Moses' experience, like my mind is blown a little bit, because firstly, that's a long time to be leading people anyway. But just there's so many times where he's in one place and God is with him in that place, and the people just don't have the vision, or worse. I think almost one of the most frustrating things, and maybe this is one where the parents can kind of talk to me about this, but is when you've told your kid something, you've gone over it, you've been through this situation before, but they're not getting it. And I think it's not just like, okay, not getting something the first time is one thing, but when you should know better, it's one of those moments where you should know better. That's almost the most frustrating, right? Like, how could you not get it by this time? And I'm thinking, imagine that for Moses times a million. How many times do they need to go over the same cycle? And it shows me sometimes being a leader is glamorized, right? People don't show the frustrating side of being a leader. But that is the majority of what leadership is about, right? Is trying to just get people on board. And I want to focus, we could do like the whole of Exodus and Numbers and probably half of Deuteronomy as well. But I want to look at one story in particular today, because for me, this sums up so much of Moses' experience. And it's pretty much just the last experience of his life, more or less. But it's in Numbers chapter 20. And it's the start of Numbers chapter 20 as just to set the scene for you guys. They've been wandering in the wilderness. The year after they got out of Egypt, they spent a year where they went through the Red Sea, went through some wilderness experiences. They experienced a little bit of lack, and it was the first time it's ever happened where they had no food or water, but then God provided through miracles. And then they got to Mount Sinai and God gave them the 10 Commandments. We had what we spoke about with Aaron and the golden calf incident, but they came through that and they got to the borders of the promised land. We looked at in Joshua last week. This was after 1 year. And they spent 40 days spying out the land, came back with a bad report. And then they abandoned, they said, let's go back to Egypt. And God was like, that's enough. This generation, he said, 10 times you've rebelled against me in this 1 year. And this unbelief that you have, even after all of this, I'm going to give you what you asked for. These people have been saying, I wish we'd died in this wilderness. I wish we could go back to Egypt. And he says, okay, your children will get to go into the promised land, but you're going to have exactly what you asked for. And you're going to wander around this wilderness for 40 years. And so they spend 40 years wandering around. And then we get to Numbers 20. They're pretty much at the last stretch. They've nearly finished this 40 years. God has told them, we're getting ready to go into the promised land. And as they get to almost like the last campsite, something happens, which is for all this 40 years in the wilderness, God has provided. They're walking through a desert. And what makes a desert a desert? No water, right? So how do you keep 1 million people alive with no water? Well, God did it through a miracle. And we're going to see how he did that. But basically, they reach this point and the water dries up. And so this is where we pick up the story. And I actually asked one of you guys, Darren, could you read this for us? Numbers 20, verse 1 to 5. Oh, sorry, you're muted, bro.
Then the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. Now there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered together against Moses and Aaron. The people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, if only we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. Why have you brought up the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness, that we and our animals should die here? And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is not a place for grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, nor is there any water to drink.
Okay. I know you guys have, do you have any thoughts on this before we even go further? But just reading that. Go ahead, Dave.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. I was going to say that, the enemy has got a way of, the enemy don't like us. It jumped out at me when it's that he's writing and saying that how his sister has died. So this is how he's starting off the chapter. Miriam has died and is buried. And this is Miriam. This is like a prominent figure in this whole journey. Like, she is a prominent person in this journey. And they're not even giving a man a moment to mourn his sister, the one who started off this whole thing. The whole reason why they're there is because his sister had faith. Not even giving him time to mourn his sister before they start coming to him again, coming against Aaron and Moses. So their sisters just died, and they're not even like, we don't care that your sisters just died. It's about us. It's about us. About us. So it's almost like the enemy. When you're down, man, he don't even care when you're down. It's just like there's just no love. There's no love there. And then these people, where's that verse gone? And
Oh,
you
do you want me
made,
to come back up?
you made us come out of Egypt. What's the bit they talk about pomegranates and that?
Yeah, to bring us to this evil place. It is not a place of grains or figs or vines or
This is
pomegranates.
what you're saying. It's not a place of figs, pomegranates. Bro, you haven't eaten. You're talking about wanting figs and pomegranates and all of that. As if that's what you was yamming in Egypt. You ate figs and pomegranates in Egypt. Like, you're lucky that you had a meal. You're talking about figs and pomegranates and all of that you was eating in Egypt. Unless this was the mixed multitude.
It would have been. Yeah.
And that was spouting off this stuff.
Let me I like that, but let me throw it out there, like, is there a way, like we do on this study a lot of the time, can you almost play devil's advocate for a second and think, could the people engineer a way where they thought they're justified? Like, let me, like, I'm not saying I agree with this, but I'm saying let's go into these people's viewpoint for a second.
Technically, they're right. Technically, they didn't ask for this. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, because remember the command was through Moses, let my people go.
Yeah.
And Pharaoh let the people go. So whether some agreed or disagreed, it was let my people go. So all the people were let free. Whether they wanted to be let go at the time, I would highly assume yes, because they were in slavery. Whether they wanted to go, the Bible doesn't let us know that.
I think it does though, bro. I think it does, because what does God say when he says to Moses, you're going to go and get my people? He says, because I've heard their cry. They're crying out to be let go. You know, they were, for hundreds of years, they were saying, let us go, let us go, let us go. But then you're right, they come to him and they're like, who told you to take us out of Egypt?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So is this selective memory? Or like Jermaine said, like mixed multitude, this is the voice of a few.
Yeah.
But it could be like what a lot of us seek, that they want to be free, but they don't want to be let go.
Okay.
So they want to be free. They want to be
niceties of Egypt.
They want to be free in Egypt.
Yeah, that's what I'm
They
saying.
don't want to be free from Egypt.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like this, yeah. I remember before I was living in the current house I'm living in, yeah, that when I was in that house, I was living in one bedroom with my wife and my two children. And I remember how challenging it was living in one room, yeah. Then we got this like 2-bed flat that was up 20 something flights of stairs. And then it was like, oh, we got our own place. But then sometimes I'll be in the flat, right? And then because it was high up, and then after a long day, my children were really young, and then it would be stressful. And then I'd be like, oh man, you know, it was much easier when I was living with my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Like I'd just sit there sometimes and be like, man, it was easier when I was living with my mother-in-law. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's like,
I love that.
Really remembering, like in this moment of stress, in this initial moment of stress, I'm only remembering the good times in a way more challenging situation. Does that make sense? It's like human nature kind of thing. Because
we always do that, don't we?
Yeah.
We always like, the times were so much better before when I had that 1-bedroom place and we didn't have these stairs. And bro, that discomfort switches your memory around, doesn't it? Because the discomfort of, like, have you ever had the water cut off and the heating cut off?
Come on.
Like, we know what that feels like, right?
Yeah.
And so the water going off in a desert is like it's easy for us to look back at them and be like, you know, guys, how could you be complaining? But we know when our comforts are taken away, we quickly forget our blessings, you know? We quickly forget what God has brought us through. Just before we go to anything else, there's a couple of big points from the chat. Is that Tamara says the scary thing is that these are the children who are repeating the complaints that led their parents to die in the wilderness.
Wow.
And imagine this. So this is what I want to get to, is that these are the same people whose parents have died in the wilderness. The only reason their parents are dead is because their parents were doing the same pattern of behavior. And I want to go back to what their parents were saying. So let's go back. So this thing about the water being dried up, it's not the first time it's happened. And if you go back to Exodus 17, and Leif, could you read this verse, 17 verse 1-4?
Yeah, it says, then all the congregation of the children of Israel set out on their journey from the wilderness of Sin, according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped in Rephidim. But there was no water there for the people to drink. Therefore, the people contended with Moses and said, Give us water that we may drink. So Moses said to them, why do you contend with me? Why do you tempt the Lord? And the people thirsted there for water. And the people complained against Moses and said, why is it that you have brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, what shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me. And the Lord said to Moses,
Sorry, go ahead.
And the Lord said to Moses, go on before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel. And also take in your hand your rod with which you struck the river, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock of Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, and the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. So he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the contention of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not?
Okay. So thanks, Leif. So this has happened. So this is like 40 years before, as Tamar said in the chat, this is their parents, and their parents are basically, the first time this happens, it's almost a bit more understandable because it's the first time you've been led into the wilderness. Obviously, you should have still had faith because you've just come through, a dry seabed when the rivers parted and stuff. But still, it's one thing to come out into a desert and you've got your kids with you and there's no water and there's no heating. And I think the parents among us would definitely say, at that point, you're going to complain to the council, right? You're going to say something to the leaders. We can understand that. But one thing, anything jump out at you from that text though?
For me, the thing that's just like hitting me in the head repeatedly, I'm usually the let them off the hook guy, but every single situation or every single thing that God does for them is miracle. Everything. Like, you have to understand this. I heard what you said before. You said water comfort. Like, hold on. You're in a desert. Water is not a comfort. It's an actual.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. Like, water is sparse in the Sahara Desert is probably the largest desert in the world. It probably depends what you define as a desert anyway. So finding water in a desert is like, whoa. Okay, but you are being fed every step of the way. Finding food in the desert is still like, well, like cactuses hold on to water for one good reason, because they don't know when water's coming around again. But yet you're complaining about miracles. They're not your comforts, bro. You've just forgotten that you're walking in the realms of miracles. So for me, I'm finding it difficult because, and I get it, we've got hindsight, but what I'm finding it difficult is it's almost like they are missing the bigger picture here. Every time they've needed something, God has delivered it for them. So here is a situation where they can almost they can have a different approach to it. So there's something else going on. It isn't like, at first I thought it was just that they're just thirsty, and when you're thirsty, you just you behave in a strange way. They're just because they're thirsty, but they're talking about figs, vines, pomegranates. You're thirsty. We talk about food for. You want drink. Yeah. Everything pops up. There's something else going on, and it might just be that they haven't fully bought into the image of where they're supposed to be going. They're stuck in Egyptian mentality. They are Egyptian slaves. They've left Egypt, but they haven't left the chains of Egypt, and that's probably what's really going on deep down inside. Because this doesn't make any sense. They are. If I get water in the desert, I'm praising the Lord. If it starts to rain in the desert continuously, because I think one of the other place. Where they struck the rock, it's like a dry valley. So the only time that ever fills up with water is when there's like a downpour of water. But it probably wasn't a place where they could get water regularly. So everything is miracle. The manna, the capons that drop from the sky, everything is miracle. But now you're complaining, what? Because miracles have run out on you. Really? Seriously? Miracles haven't. And the worst thing is the miracles don't run out. Even when they murmur, the miracles still happen. So the miracles aren't even dependent on whether they murmur or not. So I think, in what we're learning is don't complain to God, ask God, because He's ready to give.
I think it's interesting, and I think you said it, Darren, earlier, man, that hindsight's a beautiful thing, innit? Simply because I think that if we don't divorce their experience from the larger picture in the Bible, starting from obviously Abraham, Noah, all that kind of stuff, but obviously God promised Abraham, listen, man, I'm gonna bust you, you're gonna go into this land, innit? Their experience doesn't look like that. The lived experience is big, man. I just come out of 400 years of slavery, man. And yes, God, I've seen you open the Red Sea, but what's going on? Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. And I think this is the experience of, I can't speak for anyone else, but this is the experience of me personally in regards to God makes a promise, or I've seen it in his word. Scratch that. I've seen it in my life. Like, God, you come through, man. But then my situation doesn't reflect what you promised. So I'm like, God, man, I'll be honest, man. What do I have to do in order to try and bring the situation about? You see what I'm saying? What do I have to do? How can I help you, God? And God is like, guys, man, respectfully, man. Like, let me work this out for you. But go on, Ash. I can see you want to go on, Ash.
No. Anyone else want to come in? I don't want to like try you guys at you. But no, I'm 100% with you. It's like, there is that, what have you done for me lately mentality, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that God is trying to work out of them, this whole time. And it's, we know it's frustrating for Moses, but imagine how it is for God. I think one thing that God says when they're on the borders of the promised land, he says something which really jumped out at me, which is this is Numbers 14. He says, then the Lord said, I've pardoned them according to your word. But truly, as I live, and as all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord, none of the men who see my glory and the signs that I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and yet have put me to the test these 10 times and have not obeyed my voice, shall see the land that I swore to give their fathers. And none of those who despise me shall see it. And this, the thing is that God makes the point that it's understandable their stress or their frustration because of their current situation, but it can't be excusable because they've seen what I've done. And it's like, it's not even once, because he doesn't actually, one thing that's mad is he doesn't really rebuke them for the water from the rock incident too much. He says, look, I've got a solution, but he doesn't rebuke them for their unbelief to the level that he does by this time, because by this time he says, you've put me to the test these 10 times. And I was researching this a little bit, and I found actually, if you read through the book, there are literally 10 times where the people do the same thing. They complain, but the thing that really gets me about this is how they complain. I think how they complain really reveals a lot about the state of their heart. Like, sometimes we don't really pay attention to the words they use, but the words they use, if you go back to what they said before, I think some of it is deep. So like you said, Darren, it's the kind of rewriting of history, where the pomegranates and all of that kind of stuff. And in Egypt, it was great. We had leeks, we had cucumbers, and they forget that they were slaves. But the other thing they do, and this is deep for kind of what's about to happen, is who do they put the blame on for their current predicament?
Moses.
Yeah, this is the thing. Every time, or each of those 10 times you read through it, and those are just within the first year, but each of those 10 times, they say to Moses, I go to slide earlier. They say to Moses, why have you brought us here? You give us water. Why did you bring us out here to kill us all? It's always down to Moses. And Moses is always saying, it wasn't me, guys, it was God that did this. And that basically becomes very crucial later on. But I think that's something that it's like a human characteristic. And I think this is where there's enough pointing fingers at the Israelites, because I know we do this. And it's something that I think we really got to kind of weed out of ourselves, is this tendency that murmuring or discontent is kind of contagious. And it is really easy when things aren't the way we want them to be at work or at church or whatever, to just jump on that bandwagon. But then we always want to find that scapegoat, right? We always want to find whose fault it is. This one thing I found really interesting with things like with COVID, for example, with the coronavirus, it's mad because people always need a scapegoat, even for a virus, and obviously you can go back to causes and stuff, but it's interesting seeing responses of some people are like, whose fault is this? Which country gets the blame for this and stuff like that. And it's like, it's crazy, as human beings, we want to be able to pin this on someone, and the people know we can't pin this on God, even though it's obviously God that got us in the situation. So who can we pin it on? Who can we murmur against? And it's mad. It's a human trait, but it's disruptive. Any other thoughts on that, guys?
You're muted, Joe. Jermaine, muted. Sorry, can you hear me? Silent.
Yeah.
Oh, hey guys.
Weird moment.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was messing around with Blake's thing. It's almost like they're trying not to blame God, but they're fooling themselves and making themselves think that they're not blaming God by blaming Moses.
Mm.
And it's almost like a self-delusion, like a self-deceptive thing. Or maybe if I just put all the blame on Moses, maybe God might not figure out that I'm actually blaming him. And it's almost like a self-delusion stuff. You know that you're here because God parted the Red Sea, not Moses. You know that it wasn't Moses that went around destroying all the Egyptian boys. It wasn't Moses that sent the locusts. You get what I'm saying? It's not Moses that's been raining down manna from heaven and feeding you. So it's almost like we get when we harbor attitudes or harbor behaviors that we know are not right, our theology or our understanding of things have to change in order to accommodate that behavior. Even to the point where you will accept a delusion in order to accommodate that attitude or behavior. It seems what's going on with these guys.
No, that's serious. That's serious. I think in our personal lives as well, we put it on, it's not that the Bible says don't do this, it's that, those people who interpret it this way, or the ultra strict people telling me this. So I can quiet my conscience because I know that God doesn't really care about that. That's just someone's interpretation.
Another thing also, the language that they use is like they're actually questioning whether Moses is actually aligned to God. I've seen that a few times now.
Yeah.
Like that's in there deep. It's like, and then because Jermaine's right, it's very subtle, clever play, because they go, and why have you brought up the congregation of the Lord? In other words, we are God's people.
Oh.
Like, whoa. Like, hold on. This is Moses, the man who goes up to the mountain and has conversation with God because you lot are afraid to talk to him because you feel like you're going to bun up if anything happens. But all of a sudden now when things are tough, you're like, we're God's people, but who are you?
Exactly.
You know what's so interesting about what you just said, D? That these are the children, right?
Yeah.
So their parents are all gone. So these are the children of the people who came out of Egypt. So in a lot of respects, their knowledge of Moses is all secondhand, is what their parents have told them. So it's almost like their parents have gassed them. You guys are the congregation of the Lord. We're the ones who came out of Egypt. You guys are the congregation of the Lord. And it's almost like the Moses now would be like either a father figure or a grandfather figure to these guys now. So it's almost like, who is this old guy that's trying to lead us? Who is this guy? Well, my parents told me that, we're very special. We're the congregation of the Lord. And this guy, he don't know what he's doing. So it's almost like they're just revealing an attitude of or legacy of what their parents has done. It just makes me very strongly aware now with the legacy our words leave for those who are coming up behind us. Like what message are we leaving those who are coming up behind us? Are we giving them an overinflated sense of importance and an unhealthy attitude towards people in authority? I don't even know. So many lessons that are coming out of this thing today.
Yeah. No, that's huge, bro. I think it's weird because like one thing I've realized is that if you're around kids, they absorb everything. And so, when you come out of, you come out of the church service and then complain about the pastor went on too long or whatever it is, just like throwaway comments, you're not even thinking about it. But they're going to absorb that. And then you're going to get vexed with them when they don't respect the authority figures or whatever, but they're taking that on board 100%. But there is one thing about this that's kind of crazy though, is that, like, why did the water run out in the first place? Have anyone thought, why did it randomly run out?
That's a deep question.
It's very deep. Again,
Does anyone even have an answer? With the water, that's why it blows my mind. It's miracle water anyway. Like maybe the water ran out because they're close to where water is, because they're never really that far from water anyway, or they're not. But not all the water is necessarily drinking water, because it's either salt water or it's seawater.
Remember, they are in a desert though.
Yeah.
So like there shouldn't be any water except that miracle water. But here's the thing: if you go to Deuteronomy 2, they explain why the water ran out at this point, and this is the very deep part of it for me. It says, "And the Lord spoke to me, saying, You've skirted this mountain long enough. Turn northward and command the people, saying, You're about to pass through the territory of your brethren, the descendants of Esau, who live near Seir, and they will be afraid of you. Therefore, watch yourselves carefully. Do not meddle with them, for I will not give you any of their land, no, not so much as one footstep, because I've given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. You shall buy food from them with money that you may eat, and you shall also buy water from them with money that you may drink." So this is something that happens. This is around the same time, but it shows you something about this time. There was a reason that the miracle stopped, why the water dried up. Do you know what the reason was? It's because
they were about to go and buy water.
They were nearly home. They were at the point where they were coming out of the desert, and they didn't need a miracle anymore, because they were getting to the stage where they were nearly home. And that's what they were complaining about, is God was about to fulfill their promise.
My only thing is,
there's
only two things that could happen here. One, Moses never told him that part of the deal till afterwards. Possible. Slightly impossible. I don't know. I know it happens sometimes where you think you told everybody the full details of the journey, but you haven't. You're like, yeah, we're nearly there now. Then, oh, didn't I tell you we were going to get food when we got there? No, you didn't tell me. No, I'm sure I did. No, you didn't tell us. Or, and the only analogy I can think of is you're at the high road and you're thirsty, but the shop is in sight, but you just can't wait. So you just grumble. You just grumble for the sake of grumbling, which is why I can't let them off the hook. So it's either two things: either Moses didn't tell them, or they just I can't even find a word to describe them. They're just miserable, short-sighted people. And we've got to be careful, because you're right, Ash, we can fall into them same traps where we're close to the thing that we need to see, but because we're so blinded by how we feel, we end up missing the thing, or not even seeing the thing that we need to see. Like, that's nuts. Like, you are so blinded by how you feel. Like, you are so hungry or thirsty that you cannot see the very thing that is right in front of your eyes that's going, look, I'm here, you can buy it. Because here's the thing, the reason probably why they were so used to getting that maybe the concept of buying was like, what, buy what? Like, we don't buy, we get. Like, why do we have to buy? But God already told them, because these are your people. Therefore, I'm taking care of them, so you need to take care of them too. And guess what? I'm going to use you to take care of them, because I've been taking care of you. So you should be all right. Like, what's your problem? So yeah, wow, that still doesn't do them any favors. They're still getting beat up in my opinion.
Could it be that God wanted to reestablish in the younger gen who he was, or how Moses was operating with him? Because again, you get manna raining down from heaven for 5 years. It ceased. The impression of it being a miracle stops after a while. You know, we have amazing bodies, but you know, the miracle of a beating heart and, you know, lungs and everything working after you reach like 20, you stop appreciating that for the miracle of what your body actually is, and you start focusing on the things that are not working. Like, oh, my back don't work, this don't work, this is not operating how it used to, and you kind of forget the miracle of what actually is. And it's almost like, you know, what God had been doing as a miracle all this time may, and this is just me speculating, this is just me airing out my thoughts, may have been, well, this ain't nothing, this is what happens, this is life, this is normal. And almost like God is like, you know, all right, there's no water, so I can kind of reestablish what Moses is to you guys, or how I'm working on what actually has been taking place over these last 40 years before you get the privilege now to go and buy your own stuff and do your own stuff. Let me reestablish what the deal is and what actually has been happening here. And if that's the case, again, I've got to check when things happen to me, because it might be God trying to just reestablish some realignment of our relationship, or some realignment of who He is in our lives. Sometimes when we go through these difficult times, we go through periods when we ain't got water, we ain't got whatever it is that fills in the gap. And God is about, no, I'm about to show you that, you have got water, but I'm moving you on to a new sphere of how you live.
Yeah, definitely. Any other thoughts, man? Yeah, go ahead, John.
So just some loose thoughts from me, but I think what we're seeing here, yeah, is something that everyone has to go through, and everyone does go through, which is like, and it's one of the hardest things, the lesson of like failed expectations, the lesson of expecting a promise to look like a particular thing and then it doesn't look that way, or to expect a promise to be like a transaction where it's just given to you as opposed to there being a process. Experiencing the pains while the blessing is being birthed. And all of that, which is what all of us has to go through, including me, I've been through that. It's supposed to be a period. So the process part of it is key, because it's supposed to be a period where your character is kind of nurtured and grown. It's kind of supposed to change you as an individual, but that's not happening here. So it's a really big shame to see. And as a lesson to us, it's like, it's almost scary in a way, because these guys were right next to a man of God and they were doing that. So it's like, what hope we have to really be on our guard. If we go by the premise that I mentioned in the beginning, which is all of us have to go through something like this.
Absolutely. And one phrase that jumps out at me is, the phrase, trust the process. I think they definitely didn't. It reminded me, like, I had the weirdest incident that happened once on my birthday, and my girlfriend at the time loved surprises, and I like surprises to a certain extent, but I don't like not knowing what's going on. So this birthday, I mentioned, when you hint in, I wouldn't mind doing this. And one of the things I thought of, I wouldn't mind going on like a hot air balloon ride or doing something like that. And so I woke up, she's like, I've got a surprise, get in the car. I'm going to blindfold you and we're just going to drive. And I was like, cool, we'll do a little 10-minute drive. We'll get to one of these things that I said I wouldn't mind doing. And the drive just kept on going. And after an hour, I was like, yo, this place is kind of hard. Let me take this thing off now. She's like, no, I'll keep it on. Hour and a half, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm taking the blindfold off. And we're on the motorway. I'm like, I don't know what you're doing, but it's a cool surprise. We were driving for a long time. I think we got to like 4 hours. And I was just annoyed. I was like, I don't know what you're doing. I have plans for my day. And eventually we get to 5 hours drive. And she's rented out this like holiday home thing, Airbnb in the Lake District. And I'm like, wow, this is something I mentioned time ago I'd love to do. But I couldn't do the wait. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, I ruined it because I had to be like, this doesn't feel, someone just said it, this doesn't feel like I expected it to feel. And I think that's the thing, that the length of the drive necessitated, we had to drive that far to get there. And that was part of the best thing about it. But a lot of the time, that very thing that feels most uncomfortable is the sign that you're getting somewhere. That very thing that felt the most uncomfortable to them was the water drying up. That was the sign that they were nearly home. They've been waiting 40 years to get home.
Did you say thank you, Ashley?
Yeah. Like, we fixed the situation and stuff, but that was a learning experience, guys. As a man, that was a learning experience. But I think this is the thing, is that we got to understand that a lot of the time in the process, the most uncomfortable part is going to be the part where you're very near the end. That final, set on the workout is going to be the toughest ones, but that is not the time to quit. And this is the thing, like, I want to bring it back to Moses. Can you imagine how Moses is feeling now? Because not only this, he lived through the first time when these same people's parents said the same complaints about water 40 years earlier. They're doing it again. And he knows in his head, guys, we're nearly home. He knows that they've been on the borders of the promised land and they had to turn back and spend another 40 years in the wilderness. And he must be thinking, we're not doing this again, guys. we are not doing this again. And I think for me, this is where that leadership, that really hits home. So I want to see how Moses reacts.
That is a hard one, man.
Leadership is difficult, man.
A mentor of mine used to say this to us all the time. Leadership is hardship. He used to say, when we used to say, we want to preach, we want to do this, we want to travel, he would turn and be like, leadership is hardship. Because you get these moments where we have to learn the lesson as a leader, and then we have to kind of facilitate the lesson as leader for people who may not appreciate, people who don't intend to be leaders, people who are followers but who don't want to appreciate the lesson. They don't want to appreciate, they don't want to hear the reason why we ain't got no water is because we're close to the destination of the final goal. First of all, they don't even care about the final goal. They're just following the crowd. And so they're not going to appreciate them not having water as part of the lesson to learn to get to the final destination. So as leaders and as, you know, as men, we've got to, again, just be aware of, you know, sometimes the people that we're leading, they don't appreciate the destination. And they damn nowhere don't appreciate the journey. And we kind of just have to be aware that that might be the case for some of the people that we're leading. And just have a different understand what our motives are for leading the people and loving them despite all of that. Because Moses could have been like, you know what, I'm going. When you lot want to do this again, I'm going this time.
Yeah.
But you know, again, his attitude was, come on, guys. It was a righteous attitude.
Sorry, Jay, that's quite interesting, bro. Just on that premise, man. Following on what you were saying in regards to leadership is hardship. Bingo, I agree with you 1,000,000%, bro. It's also very, very lonely. When you think of the idea that, well, if we use the example of Moses, it's literally him versus the people, or him and God versus the people. Obviously, God is in the temple doing this thing. Moses is like, it's literally just, it's a constant kind of Avengers kind of war scene almost, man. But then the premise is this, is that even though Moses was leading the people to the promised land, God was also using the people to show Moses what was inside of his heart. Yeah. Because think about that. Like the Bible says in Ephesians that ministry, it perfects you, innit? It's always for the perfecting of the saints. So therefore it saves you. So therefore, God was using the same stone to let down everyone. Like Moses is literally dragging them, saying, guys, when you're coming. Whereas in their temperament and in their character, in the way that they're dealing with Moses, God is actually showing Moses, man, listen, bro, you need saving too, big man. Like you're not finished, you're not done. And this is why it's interesting, man. This is why it's I think the story of the Bible or the Christian experience in general is reciprocal. Is we give and we take. We have children, yes, we teach them, but we also learn from them. We have colleagues, yes, we teach them. As a pastor, you teach your congregation, but your congregation teach you a lot about yourself as well. So I think that kind of reciprocal relationship is really interesting.
Yeah. I love that, because not only is it he's teaching about himself, he's teaching them what it's like to be him. Like God is like, I got to deal with this for a few more 1,000 years after you're gone, you know, same kind of thing. But the love Moses develops for the people is also like the love that God has for his people. So go ahead.
On that point, yeah, do you think people that are hard on leaders generally tend to be those who have never experienced leadership? The hardest on leaders, does that make sense? The reason why I expressed that is because one time I was in church, yeah, and Boris had just done a howler in it, yeah, and I said to the congregation, guys, like, we got to pray for Boris, innit? And there were a few, yeah, that were like, Boris, pray for Boris? Are you mad? Do you know what he's done? Da. Like they were just reading off everything. Now, don't get twisted. There are some areas of incompetency, yeah, like, let's be plain, right? But he's still a leader nonetheless, right? But the point I'm making is that in any leadership role, there's always going to be areas where somebody is completely not equipped or completely not able, yeah? And do you think people should generally have more grace upon leaders, or do you think it's very much dependent upon the leader himself? You know?
I think it's interesting because I think the congregation would have thought they were in their rights to say the same thing about Moses that these people are saying about Boris. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Boris is Moses, but from their point of view, remember what they're saying. They're saying, Moses, you said you'd lead us to the promised land. It's 40 years later, we're still in the wilderness, and now there's no water. How are you doing your job? And so from their point of view, they don't see it as we're nearly there. They see it as, Moses, you're failing because we're in a worse situation now than when we left, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I definitely think they don't see the big picture because they're not in that leadership position. But I think when we read these stories, this is why, for me, these stories should change us. You know, it should change us because we don't know. We don't have access to the same data, the same facts.
On that point, the point I'm making actually is that when you've ever had some form of leadership, even if you see another leader failing, I believe what leadership does is it allows you to have a sense of empathy, maybe is the word. Like, I may not agree and I may feel like you could have done it better, but I empathize because if I was in your role, would I have made the same position or same decision, I should say? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like, for example, if I put myself in Moses' shoes, we went on a detour that was not even in the plan of God. The thing should have taken 40 days. You lot started complaining, and now it's taken 40 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then as a result, when we see these reactions from Moses, right, very human reactions from Moses, those reactions, I can almost empathize with them in a way.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Because it's like, we're already on a detour. You lot keep complaining. And as much as it's revealing things from about Moses, like Clark said, I believe it's also frustrating for Moses because he also knows it shouldn't be taken as long as it is.
100%.
And as a result, it's always testing his character. And I think that's the point Clark's making as well, is like his character is consistently being revealed through the trial of dealing with their murmuring, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I want to go into that. I know our time is getting long. We definitely want to cover this. So let's see what Moses' reaction actually was. So yeah, Jay, could you go into this? Numbers 20, verse 6-8.
So Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and they fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together. Speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water from them out of the rock and give drink to the congregation and their animals."
Right. So this is very similar to what had happened 40 years earlier, right? Same thing, go to the rock, water's going to come out of the rock. So it seems to be like restarting the miracle. But some difference, I know, Jay, you kind of pointed it out. He says, speak to the rock, right? It doesn't say hit the rock this time. But let's see what happens. So we go on in Numbers 20 and Numbers 29-12. It says, so Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock. And he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock?" Then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation and the animals drank.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right.
The goal was achieved, but
What happened to Moses between getting up from the prayer, from the tabernacle of meeting, to the rock, and that little space of time, or whatever happened? Who spoke to Moses and got Moses vexed?
he was mad, yeah.
What happened to him between being in the presence of God and God? And like, being in the presence of God is not a small thing. Like, you're in the presence of God and God has given you a particular thing to do. What happened to him?
Yeah.
Between moving from the presence of God to going to the rock?
Do you think the Bible was omitting something there?
Huh? Now, I know you ever been mad with someone and God has told you, bless that person. And you're almost like mad with God that he's impressed you, that you need to
to be nice to this person.
Mm.
Or you need to not treat the person how you want to treat them. But it's nuts. I think I'm gonna go back to what you were saying, Clark. Remember the last time something similar like this happened with Moses? He went down and told the people to eat the hot gold and burn up your belly. After God told him, go and show them mercy. This is like, I'm going down there to show you lot mercy, but yeah, you lot got to get some beating for this still. It's a something similar, very, very similar that's happened, and God is saying, go and show them mercy. And it's almost like what you're saying, Clark. Moses has still got some temper in him. Moses still got some Moses in him, even at this point, where, you know what I mean? There's still, as much as he's God's man, there's still something in Moses that makes him flip out.
Oh, that's interesting, Jay, man. Is literally like, Ellen White breaks it down, man. She says, man, one of my favorite quotes in the whole world, fam. Jonathan's laughing. She says, man, that those who are closest to Christ are the worst sinners, isn't it? So think about that. So that means this. And if we use the premise in Ephesians, that says, you know, ministry, it perfects the saints, bro. That means this, man, that those who have positions of power, it's not necessarily because of a talent, but it's because that's the only way God can save you.
Yeah.
Think about that. So we have to remember, this is the same Moses who he killed a man, bro. I've never killed no one before. I've never shot no one, never stabbed no one. I've done anger management for 10 years, but I've never been to that extreme, bro. You see what I'm saying? So Moses has got way more than me. But the premise of this is that Moses, God is like Moses, man. I have to keep you close to me because I know what you're like. I know that, bro, man, like you're leading the people that you're worse than. How about that? Like, think about that. Like, let's not make it seem, man, that Moses, obviously we know Moses, there's people in the Bible, man, who are bosses, innit? Moses, Noah, we know Elijah, we all know that stuff, man. But for Moses, when we look at the life or the character of Moses, man, he has some real character flaws, man. And in my mind, man, the way I see it, man, is that God is like, big man, I can only bring you I can't bring you to the promised land. I'm going to have to bypass the promised land, and you're going to have to go, you know, you're going to have to wake up on a great gate that morning, man, simply because, bro, you're a mess. But I can save you, though.
Yeah. Hear the madness, though, Clark. What happened to these people 40 years before? Their attitude barred them from getting into the promised land. And Moses is the leader at the gates, and his attitude has barred him from going into the promised land. Wow. So what's the difference between, you know, what's God trying to say?
There's no difference, bro.
Like, the same thing.
Quick point, guys, yeah?
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Stephen.
No, literally just to back what you guys are saying, man. I think personally for me, if I'm meant to try to apply some sort of lesson or principle for me, I think Moses should have lingered in God's presence more, if that makes sense. So for example, it's like, I don't think Moses really agreed with God's decision to basically say to them, go to the rock, speak to it. I think it was uncomfortable for him to have to go through that because his reaction showed that he was obviously angry, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I think that practically speaking, it's good to be in God's presence, but we need to linger in it until we're one with God's spirit, basically. And even if we disagree with what the spirit is kind of showing us, it's okay, but just reason it out, if that makes sense. Then when we leave God's presence, we're in one with the spirit. And I believe that if Moses had lingered and tried to wrestle his natural inclination to just be like, God, like, I don't get it. These people are just being a bit, it's okay to have those feelings, but it's also good to be honest about it and just be raw and say, God, listen, like, I'm fighting it hard, man. Like, these people are just literally like making me lose my mind, sort of thing. And God would have understood that. But I just think at times we need to just linger in God's presence, because it shows me that I can be in God's presence, but still leave it and still not kind of be in that kind of presence myself, basically. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's really deep, man. It's really deep. It's really deep. It's really deep, man.
Yeah, man.
I love that, Steve.
This is why I love the Bible, because this is a real thing. It makes me question on why Moses and Aaron went and put their face down in front of God in the first place. Because normally when you, it's almost like where he's pleading on behalf of the people again.
Yeah.
Moses normally does.
Yeah.
It makes me question now, but why did you do, what was the motive for you going down and doing that? Is it because, bro, I want to rouse up these people, God?
Do you know what it reminds me of, though, Jay? It's like, imagine you're a parent, right? And your kid keeps getting arrested. Okay. To the judge, you're interceding on their behalf. But when you get home, that kid is getting a beating. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I think that's the thing with making them eat the gold from the thing. Moses literally was willing to lay down his life so these people could survive. But he still, when he got back to the people, he's like, we're bringing the discipline. But I think even that is slightly different from what's happening now. Because when he made them eat the gold and stuff, he was doing that. It was harsh punishment, but it was to get them to turn around and realize where they were spiritually and wake them up. I think this is, apart from the time he kills the guy, for me, this is the only time we see Moses actually lose his temper, like lose control of his temper, because it's something he says, and we'll see it in a second, but it's like, you know, the difference where you say, when you're disciplining your child, it's hard, right? But you know why you're disciplining them.
Yeah.
But parents will say there can be that time, and hopefully there's never that time where you cross over where it's just retribution. The kid just made you angry. You're not trying to correct them anymore. You're just trying to hurt them because you're so frustrated. And I think this is that time. And I think there's one reason why I would say this that time is what Moses has said. Like, if you look at the exact words he uses in the quote, there's a section we highlighted, and this for me says it all, is where he says, "Hear now, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock?" And the striking the rock twice is one thing. Obviously, God told him not to do that. But I think he genuinely is on his face interceding for the people. Like, God, we got them this close. Let's not lose it now. You know, we're so close. I don't want them to perish. But then he's just had enough. It's almost like he temporarily loses his love for the people. And I 100% agree with what Stephen said. And it's such a deep point is, Moses has been in the presence of God. He's been closer to God than anyone else. But you can't take that for granted. You can't think because I was in the presence of God last week, now I'm all good. And, you know, we all know that. We've all like preached sermons, given messages, and we know at that point in time, we feel closer to God than anything. But we know we can't take that for granted because we know where we might end up a few hours later. You know what I mean? So I love that point that you're making, Steve.
Yeah, that's deep.
Why it's interesting, man, is just based on that point, man. Like Moses, he could hold a grudge. That's what I'm trying to say. He could hold a grudge, man. I'm not too sure. I don't know if anyone's done it before. I don't know how long it takes to melt gold. But I'm assuming it takes some time, man. So to melt gold and to make them drink, you know, Kool-Aid, bro, gold Kool-Aid, fam. You're thinking, rah, like that's a prolonged period of anger, innit? You see what I'm saying?
Premeditated as well.
Literally, bro. But then why you gotta love the Bible, you gotta love God, man, is because even though Moses done what he done, God said speak to the rock, Moses struck the rock. The next voice that Moses hears is God's. Now, it's God's voice God is, you know, saying, listen, man, because you done this is gonna happen. However, it must be refreshing to hear God's voice, knowing that God ain't left you in it.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. Long story short, back in the day, man's young, year 5, year 6, going to school with myself. My mum, this is back in the day when bus rides used to be 40 pence. Man used to get £1, 40p to school, 40p back, and then 20p for like a packet of crisps and that, innit? So, imagine I've gone to school, my brother goes to me, yo, Clark, come to my house after school, play some games. Now, I know he lives a 40p bus ride away from school. So if I go to his house, that means, bro, like, I ain't got home tonight, innit? But long story short, man went to his yard, playing games. His mum came, he was like, Clark, you got to leave. Now, I didn't know where he was. I didn't know where he lived. So I've left his house, and I'm in the middle of nowhere, bro. So I'm walking on the road. I remember I'm like, how in year 5, you're how old?
Like 10.
You're like 10, bro.
That's it, yeah.
I'm walking on the road and I'm bawling, fam. Cause I'm thinking, bro, I don't know where I am, fam. And I kid you not, I'm walking, big bag, walking. It started to get sunset, the sun's sunset. And then I hear beep, beep. I look to my right, and it's my stepdad and my mum.
Wow.
Now, I wasn't where I was meant to be. But even so, I was glad that they have found me simply because, bro, now I can get home. I know when I get home, it's curtains, fam. But I'm going home though, innit? So I'm happy, fam. And in the same way, bro, man, like for me, it's like Moses, he's like, yo, God is like, Moses, big man thing, man, you messed up, bro. But it must have been refreshing to be like, you know what, God, I know I messed up, man, but I'm just glad that you're still here, man. And for me, that is you just have to love God, bro. You literally have to love God, man. That's all I can say, fam.
Amen. I love that. I want to get on to his punishment, right? Because you're right. Like God said something to him after this. So he hits the rock twice. And then God says this. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe me to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. And guys, talk to me. If you're Moses, like it's a sentence, but I don't want you to miss what this would have sounded like to Moses. What's been the purpose of your 120-year-long life? From the moment you were born, and your mom's probably been telling you when you get back into your mom's custody before you could even walk or talk, your mom's been telling you, you're going to be the deliverer of Israel. You're going to get them into their promised land. And then you go through your madness. You go through, being the Prince of Egypt. Everything looks good. You're going to do it politically. Then you kill a guy. You get driven out. You think you've lost the opportunity. You go through your whole life. And then you spend 40 years taking these people around the desert. And God says, it's time. Let's go. And you get to this last thing. And they're doing something where you think, oh, no, we're going to be kept out of the promised land again. And you overreact. And God says, now you can't go. Talk to me about disappointment, guys. I don't know. I have nothing to compare this with. I know the disappointment of really wanting to go somewhere or do something and you're not invited or you get told you're grounded or you can't go, but nothing to this level, man.
If he was vexed before, he is. This is probably why they call him the most humble man. Because if he was vexed before, I remember one time I was supposed to go on this trip. I was running late, and I was trying to tell the guys, "Don't leave without me because I'm running late." But I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there. I dressed up nice to go on this thing. It was like a drama trip, and I got there, and they're gone. And man, I up to this point, I don't remember being more angry or like seething with rage at that point. To the point where I was just like, I want someone to try and rob me. I want someone to move to me. Please, someone move to me so I can just unleash. Boom, boom, boom. So if he wasn't upset before, disappointed. And when you put it in the context what you just said, like my whole life has been about getting these people to the promised land. I'm not going to be the one to do it. That is one of his final lessons, isn't it? Of trust that God knows best. I mean, he's got every argument in the world to argue with God about this. Like,
100%. I'm going to put up something on the screen as well. Like this, don't ever think this is something that Moses just takes quietly and he's like, okay, I'm not going to go. He pleads. He's like, God, are you sure about this? You see in Deuteronomy, he says, then I pleaded with the Lord at that time saying, oh Lord, you've begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there on earth or can do anything like you, your works and your mighty deeds? I pray, let me cross over to the good land beyond Jordan, those pleasant mountains and Lebanon. But the Lord was angry with me on your account and would not listen to me. So the Lord said to me, enough of that. Speak no more to me of this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift your eyes towards the west, the north, the south, the east. Behold it with your eyes, for you shall not cross over this Jordan. But command Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people and he shall cause them to inherit the land that you see. And I'm like, yo, God, I don't know if that's better or worse. He said, don't talk to me about this again. You know, you've all got that from your mums before. Don't even ask me one more time. But he says, I'm going to let you look at it, but you can't go in.
I remember, like, I know, just leaning into the point of disappointment, yeah? Does anybody remember the first time that girl that you proper liked, yeah, but she denied you? Has anyone ever been through that before?
Yeah.
I'm joking.
I was like, nah, it never happened to me.
Yeah. Well, I remember I went through a scenario where there was this girl that I proper loved off, right? And then eventually I plucked up the courage to tell her that I like her now, yeah. And then she's like, no, I only see you as a friend still. Like, not only was the disappointment crazy, right? But it was the only thing I could think about for days and days. And then I didn't plead like Moses though. Like I sucked it up and just like bopped off. Because it was too much, yeah? But the point I'm making, right? And I think you're gonna get there actually, yeah, is it wasn't until, because of what she said to me, it wasn't until afterwards that because, you know, looks aside, I actually got to know her now. I was like, wow, I could never be with you. Like, it was like a blessing from the curse, if that makes sense. And obviously, Ash, I know you're going to touch on it, but not every disappointment is a disappointment.
Yeah.
Right? Not every, you know, quote unquote bad situation is actually bad for you in the long run.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
All right. So I hear you, but I don't think it's the case for Moses. I hear what you're saying. But I have a story like that where I barely want to say the girl's name. Like the one who did it for me. I want to be like.
I was going to say her name still, but Ashley told me not to do it.
Like, I saw her and I was just besotted, and she come up to me and goes, "What? Why you keep looking at me? I don't fancy you. Stop looking at me." And I was just like, "What were you talking about? I don't like you." Tried to mask you like a bit, but I was hurt, bro. I was like, bro, my first crush at school, and I was just like, I was hurt. So anyway, with Moses, I know that, like, in hindsight, we can be like, yeah, some things are not for you, but no, this was for Moses.
It was for Moses. Yeah.
This was supposed to be his thing. This was supposed to be like, it was supposed to have the Moses stamp on it. Moses had completed his life mission. They get what I'm saying? And our God is saying that, look, you're not going to complete your life mission. The very thing that your birth was prophesied about, you're not going to do it. Joshua's going to be the one to do it. That is a harsh, you know, I want to be able to get to a point where I'm listening to God, where I don't have to learn the lesson like that.
And guys, I think that's such a deep point, is that this was Moses' mission. This was the way it was supposed to go. God's plan was for him to do this. And so, like, just being completely honest, like, I know so many people who've read this, that like, God, that's harsh. That is very, very harsh. This is the purpose of his whole life. And he makes one mistake. He hits a rock twice instead of speaking to it once. And yet, you're letting these people go into the promised land that murmured against you 100 times and stuff. And it's like, it does almost feel unfair to Moses, right? But is there a reason why this is justified, why God has to do this? I don't think God wants to keep Moses out of the promised land, but is it why? I think God's like, why did you make me do this, Moses? But now I have to give you this punishment. I don't know if you guys would agree with that. Do you think God has to do this to Moses?
Yeah, I believe
before you get there, there's something I want to say. I know that we're talking about Moses' disappointment, but there's something about in here that's just like jumping out to me. This is like, everyone's talked about their stories of girls, so I could count a few where the sweet boy look hasn't worked. Yes, I used to be a sweet boy back in the day. Where it hasn't worked, and the girl's gone, "No, I've got a boyfriend," or "No, I don't see you like that," and then they place you in the friend zone. Now, one of the hardest things to do in a disappointment is to stay in the friend zone. Because the easiest thing to do is just duck the friend zone, like duck the relationship altogether, like allow that. No, don't want to be a friend with you. Like all that time and effort you just threw into the relationship, you're just like, you know what, yeah, it's cool. It hasn't gone the way I intended. We're not going to be an item. We're not going to be a thing. So you know what, yeah, Just friend, yeah, we'll be friends. So you maybe call once a week, then it's once a month, then it's once a year, and it's never again, because what you wanted, you weren't going to get. So it's fade away. Moses doesn't even do that. Really doesn't do that. What I really love about this is the fact that he just gets on. And he's given a task of raising Joshua, and he does that. That's massive. So as much as he's disappointed, it's powerful that he still carries on with the same integrity. That's why, for me, Moses is one of the big boys in the Bible. Obviously, the biggest boy is Jesus, but he's one of the big boys. Simply for that, like, this could basically, he could be like, you know what, God, allow you. Oh God, like, I'm going back to, I'm just gone. I can go back to Midian. I've got family. I can take my wife and I can go. But no, he sticks out the job, even though the job description has changed, even though he's not going to see what he wanted to see, he's still committed to the job, still committed to the goal. And I think for me, that is just, that is amazing leadership, because now it's more about, he's now remembered the rule one of leadership, I think, is that it's not about you, it's about the end goal. And it's always about the end goal.
Yeah.
I like that. Thanks, Dan.
Stephen, I think Stephen wants to make a point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
guys.
man. Yeah, I've enjoyed so far, man, in terms of the point that's been made, and it's really just hit home, man. And I feel that in terms of Moses is being called to lead him into the promised land and stuff, I agree 1,000%. But I also believe that at some point, if one correct me, that Moses lost sight of the bigger purpose, which was for him to actually be there, if that makes sense. So I think whilst he's obviously leading them, it kind of became a point where he's the one that's leading them. That's my mission, that's my purpose. But then I think God's ultimate purpose was that Moses actually be in the place he was leading people to be. So prime example, like, there was a time in my life where I was disappointed more than I can imagine. So for a long time, I've been impressed with the desire to be a pastor. So for a long time, so my mind didn't do it, kind of lingering, delaying, doing other stuff. And then I finally went in 2014 to go to America, to Oakland and stuff. Unfortunately, I was there for a year, expensive, didn't have the money to finish, and the semester was coming. I had no money to basically get cleared, and the semester started, wasn't in college, trying to basically speak to people down England, pastors, conferences, need help and stuff. And unfortunately, it didn't work out how I wanted it to be, basically. And it's like, I remember just thinking to myself, well, my whole life in my head, I'm thinking I'm called to be a pastor, man. I don't really understand why it's working out this way, basically. Yeah? But it's like, in my mind, even though I've progressed and things have changed and whatnot, it's really hit me, man, because I've preached many sermons, man, and I've done campaigns and I've done ministry. And why this point is really hitting me personally is because I don't want to be that person that Paul said, man, that like a castaway, basically. Like I'm preaching to others. Others are blessed. Others are lifted. Others go home revived. And even though I'm the one that's being called to basically in that moment to lead them to that place where they're trying to get to, I need to make sure that I'm in the same sort of boat, if that makes sense. I can't just see it as I'm called to be a pastor or to be such and such, which is good. But I think that I can't lose sight of the ultimate goal, which is to make sure that I myself get to the promised land, if that makes sense. So it's like, Moses is not in a bad way. I just feel he was kind of focused on the leading. Like, this is my mission, this is my purpose. I need to make sure that they get there, rather than, even though I've been called to lead them there, I need to make sure that I get there also, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's really personal to me, man. But yeah, it's powerful stuff, man.
Yeah. No, I love that. I want to just because of time, I want to touch on a couple of things, because I think if you see the punishment, it does seem harsh and it does seem excessive. But I think there's there's reasons to it. And I think one of us said that one thing Moses didn't really get was he didn't get a lot of the meaning behind what was going on. You know, for him, it was just, it doesn't matter, strike the rock, talk to the rock, it's all the same thing. But it's like, be careful when those specific instructions from God, they're specific for a reason. And one thing that's really interesting is when you see later in the Bible, New Testament explains a lot about this incident. And there's a few things that really jump out at me where this punishment does seem super harsh, but I can't kind of fault God for it when you look at the wider thing. So a couple of things. 1 Corinthians 10 talks about this. It says, moreover, brethren, I don't want you to be unaware that all our fathers were under the cloud. All passed through the sea, all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food. They all drank that same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them. And that rock was who? That rock was Christ. But with most of them, God was not well pleased, for their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. And that point about that rock was Christ actually says, okay, there's something deeper going on here. And you realize when, you know, there's symbolism in everything that's going on here. And, you know, Jesus also identifies himself as that rock and that source of living water. John 7, he says, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. I'm the living waters. He says to the woman at the well, whoever drinks this water will never thirst again. So he keeps on identifying himself. And loads of times him and the other writers after him identify that he was that rock that followed them, that the living water came out of. And so what Moses doesn't get is the importance of following what God tells him. Is actually, there's some deep symbolism going on that Moses doesn't understand yet. You know, what did it signify when at the start of the journey he struck the rock and the water came out? You know, we see in the text, sorry, I got the wrong reference up there, but it talks about the fact that Christ was wounded for our sins. And because of being struck, our healing comes out of that. And so that being struck once at the start of the journey represents that death on the cross. And then you get to the end of the journey, the second time you need that salvation, what does Moses have to do? What's he instructed to do?
Speak to the rock.
It says, he doesn't say strike it again, but speak to it.
Mm.
Because why? Because the death that he died once and for all. And so that deeper symbolism, that meaning, the teaching, the very thing he's supposed to be teaching through the word is completely kind of lost because he doesn't keep up with that message. So that's one thing. And then the second thing that jumps out at me about this is, like he said, what he said was, here now you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock? I think this is something that's so crazy, because again, this goes to leadership, is that this is why God has to act so decisively, which is so harsh to Moses in our eyes. But he's been saying for 40 years, every time they've said, Moses, why did you bring us out here? Moses, where's our food? Moses, where's our drink? He's always like, don't come to me, guys. It's God. It's God who's put you in this situation. It's God who's brought you out of the promised land. I'm just doing what God tells me. And then the one time they accuse him again, and he says, listen, do we have to get this water out of this rock for you? And that's the thing. He's basically what he said. If God doesn't address it, just confirms all their accusations. Everything that they've said in error and accused him of would be confirmed if God doesn't check it. And this is the last kind of part of this, and this is the biggest part, is that he is kind of treated more harshly than the people he's leading because he's the leader.
Yeah. Sorry, will you finish, Ash?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
When I'm at school, and we've got this sanction system, like, 3 strikes and you're out, and you got your persistent offenders, but then you got the good guys in the class that hardly do anything wrong. But every now and again, like, you're used to getting the persistent offenders, and every now and again, one of the good guys will do something that warrants a sanction, right? And every fiber of my being at that time wants to be like, oh, let me just let them off, because you just got caught. You just got caught out a little bit. That's not your nature. That's not really you. You just got caught. You just got caught in a moment, and I caught you. But that's not really. You're not really that guy that get these things. But you see, the moment I let that person off, come on, like what you're saying, Ash, the persistent offenders, oh, see, sir, you do that, whatever, but you're always getting on to me, and they are not hearing, they don't want to hear, well, she's not really like that, or they're not really like that. You're the one that keeps doing it. No. It's what's the name? So at that time when it's happened, I have to be like, boom, you're on the wall as well. You're getting a sanction as well. Even though I know you just got caught. But if I don't, it causes my classroom, I've lost all authority in my classroom.
Wow.
If I don't, I've lost it. I ain't got no more respect in my classroom if I don't. Do you get what I'm saying? But then after, when no one's not looking, when everybody's gone, sometimes I speak to the good one, and I'm like, you know, I had to give you that. And they're like, yes, sir. They're like, they kind of get it. They kind of mature enough to get like, if I don't sanction you, then these guys are going to think it's not fair, and it will be unfair. If I don't sanction you for doing the same thing, but they're always getting in trouble for this. But if I don't sanction you for the same thing that they do, then it's not fair. And they're mature enough to get it. And I reckon that's what God had to do with Moses, is like, look, you don't really, I know that this is not in your nature to do this, but you messed up big time, and I have to. I have to do this. But I will speak to you after.
You know what's interesting about that story, Jam, just before you carry on, is that I had a similar situation just last year. So like something, I can't even talk about it because it's a safeguarding issue, like details anyway. So kid does something, and I'm asking the whole class, who did it? And they're all just sitting there silently, like, but no one knows a bit of anything. And I've got all the usual suspects in my head. I'm like, yeah, it was definitely one of you two. And they look at me like, nah, it wasn't me. You see how and they're like, you see how you blame me already? You see all the things that people who have done something would say, they're saying. So like it's further, and then all of a sudden the good kid, or the so-called good kid, he goes, it was me. And what? And I'm taken aback. I'm blown away. I'm like, what? Are you serious? Like in my head, I'm saying, are you serious?
I was good.
And then the kids, especially the ones who are always the repeat offenders, they're like, yeah, see, what? Yeah, you thought it was me, didn't you? You thought it was me, didn't you? Look, now they're almost immediately they're expecting me to let him off the hook. Immediately. I had to, like, when I say we, like, and it's the weird thing is we came down on him harsh, like, because we had to, no choice. Like, I had to let everybody know what was going on. It went to his dad. His dad called me, started trying to butter me up to, like, let him off the hook, like, let it not be on his record, all types of foolishness. I'm like, what are you? I'm just listening again. I can't even do that. It's got nothing to do with me. That's someone else's job. Make sure that I'm not on it, or everyone else not. But I realized something. If it was one of the abrasive kids, yeah, and I don't think I'm getting somewhere with this, I might have dealt with it in a different manner. I'd have been angry with them because they just frustrate me. It is what it is. They just get my back up. But because it's one of them kids, he got the same treatment that they would have got, but he got it delivered in a different way. We had a conversation about it. It was calmer, simply because we could have that conversation. And that's quite deep, because that's what happens with God. Like, God has this conversation with Moses, even though it's like, listen, this is severe, and I have to punish you severely, but I'm not going to treat you like how I treat them, because you and I are like this. And I think that is the massive difference. When you have a relationship with God like that, it's almost like you can accept those disappointments and those punishments in a different way, because you recognize, because of your relationship somewhat with God, where you've gone wrong and what it means and the consequence. So yeah, you got lost in a moment, because it's obvious that Moses got lost in a moment, because God calls him out. You didn't believe me. You didn't trust me. In fact, you didn't even make me holy in front of these people. All the thing that you needed to do, you didn't do. And Moses doesn't go, yeah, but he doesn't try to excuse it. He says, please, I want to be there. And then God is like, no, I've said enough. This is the one I'm going to give you. So they have that conversation, but it's powerful because of their relationship. I'm repeating myself, so I apologize. But because of their relationship, he's able to punish him severely, but in a way that doesn't seem harsh on the surface. It's not like a drink gold dust, or like stir up at the serpents, and so, like like the way that God deals with the Israelites when they mess up is very different to the way that Moses is dealt with.
Yeah. It's interesting. Sorry, guys, I know our time. We're going to go over a little bit, but there's one thing that just hit me about it, though, is how do you think this would have affected the people when he said, "I'm kept out of the promised land for your sake"?
Yeah.
You know, you had to, you know, you've been, and these kids, they've only ever known Moses. Like me, I've only ever known the Queen to be in charge of the country. That's just a fixture. They've only ever known Moses, but they suddenly realize, wow, we cost Moses his life, you know, his life ambition to get into the promised land. And I think it's mad. That's almost the silver lining of this. Is God knew these people might finally pay attention to not murmuring now, because they've seen there's a real cost. It's not just to us.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine one of your kids did something terrible and you got fired as a result. You know, that's a different story, you know.
Like the iPhone bunny.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
You know that story with the girl where she was showed the iPhone 12 before the release date?
Oh, yeah. And
Dad lost her job.
it's true, yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's
Well, because she posted it or somewhere.
Yeah. She posted it and showed her brethrens and that.
And then
Her dad lost his job.
No, serious, when that real cost. Now, I said we are going to go over time, but this is the part we want to get to. So Moses is told, don't even talk to me about this anymore. You're going to die. You know, you're not going to get into the promised land. And Moses is hurting about this. And you read through Deuteronomy, you can see, read Deuteronomy 3 and 4, and you really get, the Deuteronomy is like Moses' last speech to the Israelites, but he lets them know, guys, I wish I was going with you, but because of your murmuring and my reaction to it, I can't. And he says, the Lord has taken you out and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be his people and inheritance as you are this day. Furthermore, the Lord was angry with me for your sake and swore that I would not cross over Jordan and I would not enter the good land, which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. But I must die in this land and I must not cross over the Jordan. But you shall cross over and possess that good land. And boy, if there ever was a guilt trip, that's a guilt trip right there. But and he does die. So he writes the whole of Deuteronomy, and then obviously someone takes over after his death. And there's Deuteronomy 34. Leif, could you just read that for us? Deuteronomy 34, verse 1 to 7.
Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the south and the plains of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, and as far as Zoar. And the Lord said to him, this is the land of which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give to you and your descendants. I have caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there.
Okay, and if you carry on.
So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord, and he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows his grave to this day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim, nor his natural vigor diminished.
Wow.
So a couple of things about this, guys. It hits me, like the bit that you almost miss is it said, like, who buried Moses?
God did.
God himself. Like, never think because he was angry at him and he wouldn't let him go that he didn't. God loved Moses differently. This was like his best friend. And God said, you know what? No human being is going to bury you. I'm going to bury you when you die. And it's funny, I actually took this photo a couple of months ago. I went to Mount Nebo. This is from the top of Mount Nebo. I found this big pile of rocks and I was like, I wonder if this is Moses' grave. But I was standing on this part and I looked across, and it's true. You can see the whole of Israel just stretched out in front of you from the top of Mount Nebo. And I'm like, God, you're almost making it worse. You're like, you told me I can't go to the party, but you're like, now you can watch the live stream from the party. You can't, but you can go there. And it's like, it's so tough. For me, I really get into this story. I really see it from Moses' point of view. He wants to go over so much, but God shows him this. And then he dies and he buries him. And it's a hard one because we can see the justice in this situation, right? We can see why. We already said why God had to do things this way. But it's still like, if you follow Moses' story, it's still such a harsh thing. And it's like, you can get it it's just, but boy. And you might leave it there, but then something really interesting happens. Because if you keep reading the Bible, you see some things that are unusual. And I wonder, anyone, I don't know who can read. Darren, you like to do a last little bit of reading?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, can you jump to Luke 9 for us? I think, yeah, we can just read one of those texts. They're both pretty much
I'll read the
same.
top one.
Yeah.
Now it came to pass about 8 days after these sayings that he took Peter, John, and James and went up on the mountain to pray. As he prayed, the appearance of his face was altered, and his robe became white and glistening. And behold, 2 men walked with him, who were Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of decease, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem.
All right. So what's going on here, guys?
Moses appears to Peter, James, and John, or Peter, John, and James, as the verse says. But yeah, Peter, James, and John.
So this is Moses and Elijah.
Moses is resurrected.
Yeah, so this is like, how is Moses here? We know Moses is dead. Like, we won't get into the whole state of the dead study, but we know, other people like David, when they're talking about David, they say David's dead and buried. Now we know Moses was dead and buried. God buried him himself, but suddenly here he is. He's walking and talking up with Elijah. Now we know Elijah, that makes sense. He got taken to heaven. We heard about that story, but we don't necessarily read about this in this text or in Deuteronomy. But if we go to other parts of the scriptures, we actually see the story doesn't end with Moses' death. If it ended with Moses' death, justice is done. God is honoring justice. But we see actually, if you keep reading through the text, it goes further than this. In fact, if you go to the book of Jude, it says something here. It says, Michael the archangel, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moses, dared not bring against him a reviling accusation, but said, the Lord rebuke you. And this is pointing to something that if you research it, you realize Jewish literature is full of this. The writings were full of this, this story that once Moses died, the Lord came down and the devil tried to say, look, he sinned, you can't take him with you. But he said, the Lord rebuke you, I'm taking him with me. I'm taking up to heaven, I'm resurrecting him. And we see it's the same kind of disputation that you see in Zechariah. When the devil's trying to argue about, someone not being worthy to be saved, the Lord looks at him, he says, the Lord rebuke you. This is a blind plot from the fire. I'm arguing my case, I'm taking him. And we see what actually happens in the scriptures is that Moses isn't left in the ground, but Moses is actually resurrected to be with God. And that, I know we had to rush it because we're at the end of the study here, but that for me is such an amazing end to Moses' story, because it says so much about the character of God. Like the character of God here, he knows he can't just let Moses go into the promised land. He can't just say, it's all good, you sin, but I'm going to overlook you. I have to let you suffer this punishment. And Moses is climbing up this mountain feeling like, I'm about to die. I didn't accomplish my life's work. I don't get to see the promised land. But then look at God. Look what God does. He buries Moses in the ground. And then 2 seconds later, he wakes Moses up. And he says, you can't go into that promised land, but let me take you to the actual promised land.
Come to this one.
And I'm just saying, look, imagine the look on Moses' face right then. Imagine the look on Moses' face where he's like, God's like, it's just, for me, there's no better way. Like, it shows me the hero of Moses' story isn't even Moses, it's God. And it just shows me so much of what God is like. God is so just. Justice has to be fulfilled, but he's so merciful.
Yeah.
He's so merciful. Moses would never expect this, but he says, come with me, I'm taking you to the promised land. And that's why I'm not talking about Moses today like Moses is dead and buried. Moses is alive today. Moses is up in heaven today. And to me, it says so much about God. I talk too much. I don't know if you guys want to jump in on this all, but that blew my mind when I realized this looking through the biblical text that it says that God buried Moses and 2 seconds later he woke him up again. And he let him be the first fruits of those who would be resurrected at the end of time.
Just read the MLK thing, bro.
Hold on, I'll get there.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful thought. I just like how You know, God uses the opportunity again to do the real work of the gospel, and it's to change hearts.
Hmm.
You get what I'm saying? All throughout the Israelites traveling, you know, he's had to, you know, they've seen God's hand. They've seen God beat people who's not conformed. But that don't change anything. That don't change any hearts. He's seen him open up the ground and people falling through. He's seen Moses telling the people to drink the gold. All of these stuff. He's seen, you know, they've gone on walls and everything like that. They've gone into they're not gone into Jericho yet, but he's seen God work. The thing that is going to hit home is, all right, I need to appeal to these people's hearts. And Moses, you're up. And you've got to share the testimony that is going to actually melt these people's hearts. Because of your rebellion, you lot have been rebellion since the get-go. And you've inherited this rebellious spirit, this rebellious attitude from your parents. From the get-go, you've been doing this. And this is what you've cost. And you're going to be able to get through, because this guy who's loved you all the way through is not going to get through. And if that don't convert your heart, then boy, you really don't want this thing. So it's almost like, you know, Moses, for me, why I'm a fan of Moses, because Moses is like, all right, this is, you know, he ain't got the hindsight of what he hasn't got the hindsight of what God is going to do yet. He just has to accept, all right, I've got to put the money where my mouth is. I've got to actually love these people beyond myself. You know what I'm saying? When he was like, cut me off from your goodness, or whatever what he said, so these people don't have to be cut off. Now it's time to put that in action. I'm not telling you to be cut off from me, but yeah, the promised land for the people, let's put that in action. And that is the thing that's going to win. That is the type of gospel that wins hearts over, isn't it? Not just the wrath. Sometimes we want just the wrath. These people need a beating, but sometimes it's not like I've got to give you a heart transplant. I've got to give you an attitude readjustment. And some of the times it's to look at people who are sacrificing for you.
Amen. Guys, we ran long on this one. Our time is nearly done. There's one more thing that I wanted to share with you, though, and Leif just said to bring it up on the screen. And anyone who knows me knows I'm a big kind of studier of the civil rights movement in the 60s and ongoing, obviously, till now. But one thing that always hits me so strongly is, if you know about Martin Luther King's last speech before he died. And I genuinely believe this was the speech he gave the day before he was assassinated. Now, he was getting death threats most of his life. He was getting people calling him up. And I wouldn't be surprised if he got a death threat that he thought, okay, this might be it. You know, I might actually die tomorrow. Maybe he knew, maybe God just gave him that impression or whatever. But his final words that we have recorded is from the speech. And for me, it's so powerful, because he uses the metaphors of Moses leading the people and having to die on top of Pisgah. But this is, for me, what I take from leadership. So I just want to read this to you guys. It says, well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. And I don't mind, like anyone, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Yeah. I know the speech. I can hear it in my head as you're reading it.
Yeah, I wish I could deliver it like he did, but I don't want to start shouting on the call. But
outside the White House.
No, it was his last speech.
Yeah.
The thing, and
the night
he's
before.
waxing.
But I think he sums up.
Yeah,
So Yeah, he died the day after, the morning after.
You think
In
he did?
Memphis. I think he did. I think he did. When you hear how he delivers the speech, there's a lot in it. But I think the thing that I wanted to just get across that hits me every time I hear that speech, and I recommend if anyone's not heard it, just go on YouTube and type in the mountaintop speech. But one thing that really jumps out at me is I believe he means what he said. I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land. And for me, that's leadership right there. The leadership is, even if it means I'm outside the promised land, the most important thing, the thing that my life has been for and I'm willing to die for, is to make sure that we as a people, the people that I'm with, get to the promised land. And I think whatever role, we've been asking, what does it mean to be a man? Whatever role you're in, I think as a man, this is something to aspire to strive to, only through God's power, but to get to that point where your mission as a man is more important even than your own life. Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
That speech for me is, I'm just looking at it now. I didn't even know about this speech. I mean, the only speech I really do know is I Have a Dream, which everyone knows, but this one is amazing. And I was just reading it because he's speaking about even like getting stabbed in the chest. A woman comes up and says, "Are you Martin Luther King?" He stabs and says, "If I hadn't sneezed, I wouldn't be here today." And he said, and he gets a letter from a girl, says, "I'm so glad you didn't sneeze."
I'm so
It's
glad.
an amazing and powerful impact that he had upon people. But he ends his speech by saying, "My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." To have that kind of vision is powerful. And for me, I think that's it. I think that whatever study we do, our aim has to be, when we look at whatever study we do about leadership, our aim has to be to have a Christian leadership, rather, let's be clear, is to have our eyes set upon the greatest prize, which is God's promised land, which is with him. And I think when we lose focus of that, because the reality is some people might see today, as in where we are as Africans, Caribbeans, and African Americans, as the promised land. I don't, like, we are so far from it, it's unbelievable. But some might see it like that. Others might see that there's a long way to go. But as Christians, we recognize there's a totally different struggle going on. Like, not that the struggle on earth doesn't matter, because it totally does, because we've got a massive part to play in it. But that seeing something beyond what the physical and looking towards the spiritual goal, but bringing, if you like, the spiritual goal into the physical realm is massive. But the thing that really, the thing that came to me this morning, I was thinking about this, and I'm praying it was God, not just me and my thoughts, is that maybe Moses wasn't supposed to lead them into the promised land, because, and here's my one thought, the people didn't really have a relationship with God anyway. That wasn't their thing. Their thing was, Moses, you do that, and we'll just listen to you. They needed to become reliant upon God, and that wasn't happening. It's almost like, even when Joshua's approach is different. This is what we're going to be doing at the end of his last speech, so you need to be doing that too. And so it kind of feels like a different type of leadership was needed. The kind of leadership that encouraged people to, if you like, take on the mantle and become and have their own relationships with God. And you see that in Martin Luther King's speech. He's saying, "Look, I may not even get there with you, but you've got to keep going on. All of the values, all of the ideals that are important, you just got to keep doing." And I think for me, that's one thing that Israel kind of didn't really get, is that they needed to have their own intimate relationship with God, and they couldn't rely on the high priest and the prophet, because that happened a lot. And it's only when Jesus finally comes that they finally start to make the dots and start to connect that. Oh yeah, we need to have our own. Why? Because Jesus starts to have personal relationships with individual people. Then they begin to see the value of individual relationships with God. And that's why, for me, Moses is a big man, simply because he has that, and he doesn't shy away from that. And even when he makes mistakes, that doesn't become a reason then to like pull off away from God. They just stay close. And for me, that's just it's powerful. Sorry, guys.
Amen. Thank you, guys. We're gonna have to wrap it up there, but thank you so much, guys. Can I ask Clark, could you just pray for us just to close us out?
Oh, man. Father God, as we come before you even now, as men, as extended men who are obviously not in this chat, also just as people in general, God, man, we're just asking for first and foremost, Father God, man, that you can just, when it's all said and done, man, all we want to do is be saved, God, man. We want to be like you. We want to be saved. We want to be transformed into your character. So God, man, just be with us, man. Give us more of your Holy Spirit. Give us more, of just help us, God, man, to just desire you more, to love you more, God, man. Give us more faith, God, man. And when it's all said and done, Father God, man, allow that to translate into us being more loving to people. Just be with us now and bless us. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's it. We're nearly at the end. There's a couple more things to say. And one is we ran a little long today, so we're going to have like 5-minute break. We'll be at 5 minutes to 9. We'll be in interactive discussion. I'm just going to post the 5 minutes to 9 link on there for you. But as well as that, we hope you'll be there. We'll be like 35 minutes. We won't be too long, but I'd love to share any thoughts that you guys have. But the big news is that this is the end of Moses' Mighty Men. Next week, we begin the next chapter. Moses' Mighty Women is coming next week. So this is going to be exactly the same format, but the ladies are taking over. So you won't have to see us anymore next week, but we'll have different panels of ladies going through the women in Moses' life. So some of the women that were in the story, but we haven't touched on, we think of people like Zipporah, Miriam, Pharaoh's daughter, Jochebed, the midwives. All of these women are going to be covered. It's going to be a really, really interesting discussion. So same time, same place, but next week, a whole new set of faces as the ladies take over. So please do join us for that. And yeah, I guess it's left to us to say good night. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. We'll see you in 5 minutes. If you're jumping into the discussion, I've put the details in the chat there. But see you next time, guys. God bless.